Hey, what's up? Chicago Guy here again, and we're going to be talking today about Linux. So we're going to be doing this as the first video in my Essentials series. In the Essentials series, what I want to do is I want to teach the essentials of what I think it should be known before you pursue a career in cybersecurity. It doesn't mean that you have to know it and you can't pursue a career in cybersecurity. I'm just saying you're going to be better off when you try to move into cybersecurity because it's a little bit more specialized field that really complements some of the other fields like networking and Linux terminal administration, those sort of things. And it's always good to have that base under your belt before you move on into a cybersecurity career. So with Linux, you probably think, okay, Ray, what is Linux? What's the deal here? So Linux essentially is an operating system, and a lot of times it's free. There are some out there that you pay for support, things like Red Hat and things like that. But there's many different flavors and distributions, they call them, of Linux, but they're all based around this one core thing called a kernel. So you could essentially just make your own Linux and base everything around the kernel, right? All your packages and all your different systems and applications that you want, and package it as your own Linux distribution. And there's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of different distributions out there, and there's a site called DistroWatch that usually ranks them, top as far as the most popular, and usually at the top of the list is Linux Mint. And Linux Mint is a version that's kind of based off of another one called Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is based off of Debian. So Debian's another flavor of Linux. And then you have some other ones like Fedora and Red Hat, CentOS, things like that. The one we'll be mainly dealing with today or throughout the series is going to be called Parrot OS, and that's based off of Debian. Another one's very popular for pen testers and cybersecurity professionals is Kali Linux. Now, I've been using Kali Linux for quite a while. Back when it was Backtrack 4, started messing around with it, pretty awesome stuff, and then Backtrack 5, and then Kali Linux came out. I just found it was running poorly in a lot of my VM environments. Doesn't really matter what hypervisor I was using. I always seemed to have to bump up the 3D acceleration and stuff, so I wasn't really pleased with the performance of it. So I moved to this Parrot OS, which actually has more tools than Kali's, believe it or not, and it's been running perfect for me. It's been running smooth, so I'm digging it. I'm going to be using this one pretty much from here on out, unless I have another reason to move. But Kali Linux is just as good as well. And when you really think about it, I mean, I could make an Ubuntu distribution a Kali Linux. I mean, I could just basically install all the tools that you would find on Kali or Parrot on Ubuntu, and there you go. So really, when it comes to these distributions for cybersecurity, there's not like a, this one rules all kind of situation, because you can basically make all of them the same by installing whatever packages they have, or, the pip installs or whatever it may be. You can actually make it however you want. So it really doesn't matter which one you use. But for us, we're going to stick on some Debian-based. That's what I'm most used to, as opposed to like RHEL or CentOS or things like that, or Arch Linux or whatever. But there's plenty of good distributions out there. So let's go ahead and tap on in to doing some Linux terminal stuff here. Let me verify first off that I'm moved in here. Now, with this particular one here, like I said, I'm using Parrot OS. This is what they call a terminal, and you notice that the first name of it says root. Now, when you first install Parrot OS, you will not be root. It will actually be a standard user, and I think that's also how it is for the brand new Kali Linux 2020 version as well. And the reason they do that is because it's recommended that if you choose to use this as, let's say, your own operating system to mess around with at home, it's not a wise choice to be logged in as root, because if a bad guy breaks into your machine for some reason, then they'll have access as root. So you typically want to be logged in as a standard user and only go to something they call a sudo to be able to run as an administrator or root, for certain tasks. For us, though, we're going to stay in root for the majority of all my different classes that I'll be doing, because there's a few different hacking tools that do require root, so I'm just going to stick with root by default. But it's not a good idea on a regular basic OS that you're using every day. So first command I want to show you is to determine, who are you and what is significant about root. So if I type in the word ID, it tells me who I'm logged in as. So the first thing I was trying to tell my students, or get across to my students before with that last scenario, is that you want to find out who you broke in as. If you broke in as like www-data, you don't have like root privileges. So there's very limited things you can do once you broke it in. So the knowledge is power. It's good to know who you broke in as. If I broke into a server and I did this and I saw root, Hey, pop, pop, pop into the server drop with love and life, because this is God mode, essentially, for the Linux side. Similar to administrator on Windows, right? But it's more like probably anti-authority system, I guess you could say, on Windows. This is pretty much you can do whatever on the system as root, okay? So that's the idea. And you'll notice the 0 that it's significant by. And then you'll see a GID, which stands for the group ID in this particular case here. Now, you can also do another command called who am I? And it will tell you, hey, you're root. All right, very cool. Now, another thing that you need to understand completely before we get into some other commands is the difference between absolute and relative path. So in order to understand that, I'm going to teach you another command called PWD, in other words, print working directory. In other words, what directory am I currently in? So I'll say PWD, I'm in root. Now, something to keep in mind before we continue, everything in Linux is case sensitive. So in other words, capital ROOT is not the same as that right there. Okay, it's not the same thing. So be aware that that's the case. So you notice a slash there in front of the root. Well, I'm going to go show you another command to kind of explain what that's all about. So I'm going to type in the word CD, which means change directory. Now, you may be familiar with that from Windows. Same thing. This just means I'm going to change to a different directory. But in this case, I want to go up one level from where I'm at. So currently I'm at root, but I want to go to the slash to the right. I want to go to that. So I can do ... after it, hit enter. And if I do print working directory, you'll see it tells me I'm in slash, essentially. Slash from Guns N' Roses. Yeah. But this case here, this is the top of the file system. And when you ever think of the words absolute pathing, it starts from here. So if I wanted to go to the HTML folder in var, it's actually at /var/www/html. That's an absolute path. If it's in the directory I'm in currently, it's called relative. So I'll show you an example. There's another command I'm going to teach you called ls, which tells me to list whatever is in this directory. So I'm going to do that, and you'll notice in this directory, there's root. Now that's the one I was in right here. And I went up a directory, so I'm in the slash directory, as it were. I don't know the real name they give it, but in this case here, it's within there. So that's relative to where I am currently at. So if I want to navigate back to root, I just type in cd root. You're thinking, well, wait a minute. Don't you have to do a slash? No, not if it's relative. So I don't have to do this one up here. I can just do cd root because it was in my relative path. Now, in this case, if I do an ls, you'll notice I only have a few different directories here. So, for example, the example I gave of the Apache 2 web server location, var www html, okay, 3 different folders. If I want to navigate to that, you'll notice var is not in here at all. It's in the directory above me, but it's not in this one. So that is what it's going to be called an absolute path. So if I want to go to var www.html, I would have to do cd, then I'm going to do slash var /www/html, and there we go. So in this case here, you can see that's where I'm at. That's because I went to a relative path, okay? And if I'm here, ls, there's nothing here for a folder, right? So in this case, if I go up a directory and then list, I can see there's the HTML folder. That is relative to where I am currently at. Therefore, I can just do cd HTML, and it can pack me up to that folder. So that's the difference between absolute and relative pathing. That's very important to understand. Let's go back to the ls command. I'm going to go back to my root directory. So in this case, if I want to go directly back to root directory, which is I'm logged in as root, so I want to go back to that. An easy trick to do it is to do cd and then a tilde symbol, right? So my tilde symbol basically tells me that. Now, in this case, it's also in my video thing, a way to switch screens, so I got to make sure I'm not switching my screen here. So cd tilde will bring me back to pretty awesome. So in this case here, those are some basics. Now, I'm going to show you the ls again. And you can see I've got some files in here that are highlighted in green, if you will, and red. And then I got some in blue that are my directories. Now, everything in Linux is considered a file. Okay, even though it's a directory, even though this is a real file, everything's considered a file because you can set different permissions on it, and you can have it do different things. But that's the way they determine it. And if you want to find out the difference between what this, let's say this file right here is in comparison to this, you can use another command called file. So if I want to know exactly what that Ajax one is, I can say file, Ajax, enter, and it will tell me it's a tar archive, which is kind of a zip file. Now, if I want to find out what that is, don't forget what I said. Linux is case sensitive, so file desktop won't be recognized because, again, it's case sensitive. So I have to do file desktop. Tells me it's a directory. Okay, so pretty easy there. Now back to the ls command. I can do an ls and then a -l. Now when I say dash, you'll hear me in this video series say tac. That's just the way some people say a dash. So if you hear me say tac, that's what I mean. So ls tac l will let me list all the different properties of the different files and folders that are in here. So here we can see at the very beginning of it, if I can highlight just that signifies that it's a file of some sort, and the D signifies it's a directory. Now we're going to get into these things when we talk about permissions, and that'll be a little bit later in the video. But this will tell me some certain size of the file. It will tell me the date of creation and time and all this other good stuff here listed out. Now what's not listed here is what they call hidden files. So there are some hidden files that start with a dot. So if I do ls tac LA, that tells me to list all hidden files as well. So what I've noticed a lot of people do when I teach my certified ethical hacking classes is they'll go ahead and break into a machine and they'll do an ls, and they can't find a particular folder that has a flag that's being used in a capture the flag. And what they're missing is that it's a hidden file, and they forget about the ls tac LA or ls-a. You can use that as well, and that will show you hidden files. So pretty awesome stuff. That's pretty much all you need to know for the ls stuff. Now, keep in mind later in our Essentials series, there will be a series called Pop, 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 Another Server Drop, where I'll be going over something called Over-the-Wire Nataz. And that is a war game that has many different challenges, and it teaches, well, it kind of goes over what we're going to go over here today, plus a little bit more. So we're going to use that as well with our Essentials series, which is going to be pretty cool. All right, so let's move on to some system stuff. So if I want to find out what system I'm in currently, I can do uname, and then I can do a -a, and that'll tell me, okay, it's Parrot OS. That's the flavor, if you will. And this is the version of it here, AMD64. It tells me it's based off of Debian for the kernel type and stuff. These are important to know for when you break into a machine and you want to find an exploit for it. So if you don't know exactly what machine you've broken into and what server they're running on, you can do the uname tac A, and it will tell you specific version number and kernel version of that distribution that you've broken into. Now you can go on something like ExploitDB and look specifically for that number if there's any known exploits for it. So it's very important to know uname tac A. Now, if you want to know just the kernel, you can use the uname tac R. Now, I'm going to show you another trick here. You can hit your up arrow on your keyboard, and it will replay the last commands. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and we'll do tac R. And you can see right there, that's the kernel version there for Parrot AMD64. Now you can also show how long the system's actually been running by just typing in uptime. Okay, that tells me right there, one user, it's been up this amount of time here, load average, all that kind of good stuff. Pretty awesome. Now you can also go ahead and give the host name of what I'm actually in as currently, and I believe it's just root if I'm not mistaken. So let's see. I think that's what it is. Nope, Parrot, I'm sorry. So it's Parrot. So whatever you had named your distribution, that'll be it. That'll be kind of like the DNS host name type of situation, kind of like similar to like the NetBIOS name, I guess you could say. That's the only thing I can really relate it to, I think, in that case. Now you can also go ahead and try to list the IP address of the host by using some networking commands, but you can also use the host name one as well with a different switch. Now when I say switch, again, these are let me explain switch real quick here. So host name is a command, and then -blah is a switch. It's basically something additional that you add to a command for more functionality. Like for instance, if I wanted to find a help file for host name, I can just do a host name H a lot of times, not every time. And it usually will tell you a help file. And you can see right here, there's a variety of different switches that are listed here. Now, these are important because they help you construct your command line, and it makes you not dependent on, script kiddie nonsense, where you can actually go in there and actually learn this stuff and make your own scripts to do certain things. A good example is when I was teaching my certified ethical hacking class, there were some instructors in the field that I had worked with who I watched some of their classes, and all they did was read these PowerPoints all day long. And I'm like, what? What is the deal here, man? You want to get hands-on, baby. You want to get them in here and actually screwing around with this stuff, right? So I wouldn't give the students like a cheat sheet, as it were. I would say, here's what I want to do. And then I would show them where the help file is. They would have to come here and tell me the switches that would go with it. And you'd be surprised from people that know nothing about Linux how well they did at actually answering the question correctly, because I forced them to actually construct the command by knowing all the different switches. So it's important that you do this. For instance, the IP address one. If I want to do the IP address one, I can either do TAC-I or TAC IP-address. In our case, we'll just do TAC-I. So in this case, again, case sensitivity, because you see there's a larger one in that particular one there. Actually, let's do that one because it shows all the addresses for the host. That would include my link local. That would include my local subnet one. That would include my VirtualBox one, I think, as well. So let's do, host name, and we'll do capital I. Boom. There we go. All right, so that's those are my two right there. Outside of my outside of my local host one, those are my two addresses that I have. So yeah, host name's a pretty good one to know. Now you can also go ahead and find out when it was last rebooted by typing in last reboot. Pretty simple. And it tells you there whether or not it's been running, when's the last time it's been reboot. So this is good for intelligence gathering when you break into a machine, as you start doing recon on the machine to find out how you're going to, do privilege escalation and things. It gives you an idea of, how long does a server typically stay up? If you see a long span of time, it's probably likely that this is a web server with the amount of uptime it has. And if it's down for certain intervals at certain times, you may think, this is a patch cycle that they're doing or something like that. So it's a really good information gathering tool that you could use. Another typical one you can do is date, and that will just basically tell you the date. Now you may find sometimes, and I found this a lot with some of the distributions I had set up previously for another place I worked at. I had to come in and screw around with this time zone, and sometimes have to set up the NTP server time zone stuff on it because it will give you like Greenwich Mean Time or whatever. So it's good to go ahead and look up some more things about date, because you may actually have to change it, because if the date is different than let's say a certificate that you're on, when you go and try to browse to like Google, it'll give you a certificate error because the date that shows on your system computer time is like either well below what the actual certificate is valid for in this case. So yeah, so it's good to know the date command, I think, for this one. And a very simple other one too for like if you want to know the calendar, you can do cal, right? And this shows the calendar. So very simple stuff. Now, if you want to get into some more hardware related things, you can actually start displaying things like your CPU information, things like that. To do that, I'm going to show you another command called cat. Now, cat is a way for me to display or type in or show on screen the contents of a particular file. For example, there is a configuration file for Apache 2 that's under, I believe, ECCE folder. So if you do cat, and then I say /etc/Apache 2, I think it's apache2.conf if I'm not mistaken, it should be able to display all what's in that particular file here on the screen. See? Just like that. So cat is a great command for being able to do that, and you're going to use that. We're going to use that actually in some of our boot to roots, as it were, when we do web app stuff, because we'll be doing things for command line, command injections and things. All right, so let's display our CPU information. To do that, we type in cat /proc/info. I'm sorry, CPU info, I believe. Yeah. Is that right? Yep. Cool. So that gives you, let me go back up here so you guys can see that command again. Sometimes I'm a little fast. So right there, cat proc CPU info. And here you can see exactly all the different details about your actual CPU, which is pretty awesome. AMD FX, Authentic AMD. It gives you all the different things about the core and all that kind of stuff. So if you're really nerding out and want to know all that kind of information, there you go. Have fun. Now you can also display your memory information as well. So we'll go ahead and hit our up arrow. And this time, instead of CPU info, we'll still keep in the proc directory here. We'll say mem info. And that tells me how much memory I have right here. So memory total and memory free. Okay, so I assigned about 4 gig, I think, to this one, maybe. I think I did. I thought I assigned more than that. But anyway, yeah, I think I only did 4 gig. And this tells me how much memory I have free. Pretty awesome. You can also display it in a different readable formats, like they got one called human readable, and then they got one also for MB, for meg, if you prefer to read in meg or gig. To do that, you type in free, and then you say, I don't know, let's just do -G, and we can see it in gigabyte. Or you can do free, and you say -M, and it will show it in megabyte. Okay, so that's what this basically means. So 3 gig here, and that's what it is in megabyte. You can also display any PCI devices that you have. You can do ls, and then you say PCI space -TV. And then this one right here is for the PCI devices that you have on the machine itself. And right here shows you all the different ones, like the SVGA adapters. And again, of course, these are all the virtualized ones that you have through VirtualBox in this case here. You can also list any USB devices as well. You can say ls USB, and then you can do a -TV for that one as well. And that will list any of the root hub USB that you have in this particular system. You can also look up your disk partitions and disk like SDA. Usually they'll use words like SDA1 or SDA2 to represent some hardware, some hard drives, and they may represent DEV or something for a device or something to that effect. So what you can do to list all your disk partitions is you can use a command called fdisk, if I can type it in correctly here, and then we'll say -L. And right here it tells me, like I was mentioning there, SDA1, SDA2 is what they would list them as there. So those are important to know because you want to know exactly where you want to go ahead and maybe put a particular virus. If you think you're putting it in the swap space, that really ain't going to do a whole lot of good. So you want to put it actually in the hard drive of the system that it's running. So it's a good idea to know exactly what SDA that you're running there. Pretty awesome stuff. Now another one you can do is you can look up disk usage, which would use the keyword DU. And this one here, you can do oops, I'm going to go back here. We can say AH. Whoa, I'm going to scroll back up here. And this will do show disk usage for all the files and directories, and it's going to put it in what they call human readable form. So, yeah, anyways, that's quite a few. Let me scroll back down here for that. That's what that particular command does there. Again, it's DU-AH. Now let's move on to some monitoring stuff. So if I want to monitor how my Linux is actually running, I can display, like the top processes that are running currently in a view that's a little bit better than just basic garbled command line stuff. So I can type in the word top, and it will show me the top processes in this particular case here. And you can see it's listed it out. It's got the PID on the left. It's got the user for which it's being used. And then over on the right, you see the command in this case here. Some of it is the, like this right here is the File Explorer. This is the window interface. GNOME, again, is the display, the X graphical display thing, if you will. I don't know what they call it, theme. I think that's the word they use for it. And here you'll see the CPU usage, the memory usage, very similar to Task Manager in Windows. So that's what you would use for that. Okay. Now, if you want to interact with it, by the way, what I'm going to do here is do a Control-C. So if I hold Control, hit C, it'll stop that process. If you do a Control-Z, it'll pause the process. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and do one that's a little bit more active or interactive. I'll say HTOP. Now on this one here, you can start selecting things, right? And you can filter, and I can pick on just that one there, pick on that one, right? So it's more interactive in the terminal as opposed to top, which is just, plain and simple, command line. So again, I'm gonna hit Control-C, and it'll take me out of that. All right, let's go ahead and display the last 10 words or 10 lines of a particular file. This is also going to be used at times when you want to have a window open and you want to actually monitor any additional lines being added to a file, and you would use a command called tail. So in this case here, we're just going to go ahead and tail the last, I don't know, 10 lines, let's say, of that Apache config file that I was looking at earlier. So I'll say /etc/Apache2/ oh, by the way, you can actually do a tab right here like that, and it will actually look in that directory that I'm in, and if anything is there that starts with APA, it'll automatically go to that when I hit tab. Now, if there's like 18 different things that start with APA, that's a little bit different. You have to keep hitting tab, but if that's the only thing there, then it will actually do auto tab complete, which is pretty cool. All right, so tail tac 10 will give me the last 10 lines of Apache Conf, okay? And this would be considered a line there, okay? So right there, that's how you do it. Now, if I want to see the first 10, not instead of the last 10, I would do head. So I can say head, tac, actually, let's go ahead and do this to be a little quicker. I'll just do that, come back here. And by the way, to do this cursor thing here, I'm moving my right and left arrows on my keyboard. So I'm going to go back here, and we'll say head and -10. Bing. There we go. So that's the top 10 lines in that particular file as well. Now, if I want to go ahead and capture packets and, you know, different things that I'm doing within my machine itself, I can use a tool called TCP dump. Now, some of you may be familiar with something called Wireshark or something called packet sniffing. And basically, Wireshark acts as a GUI. It's got a GUI interface, and you can actually capture packets that are being sent. So when I go browse a website, it'll show me the TCP send accessions and all that three-way handshake stuff. Pretty cool. The command line way of doing it is TCP dump. Now, people will say, well, Ray, why would I care about it if I got Wireshark? Well, what if you don't? What if you're on an engagement, a pen test engagement, and what if all you have is a terminal? Or what if you break into a machine and you need to be able to figure out the packets going on there, and it happens to be a Linux machine, let's say, and you don't have access to the GUI. You don't have access to Wireshark. You need some way to capture packets. Well, TCP dump comes installed on a lot of different Linux distributions by default, so that's a great tool to get familiar with. Now, there's millions of commands for the TCP dump. We're just going to do a very basic one, so I'll just say I'll say TCP dump, and we'll do tac-i ETH0. But before I do that, you may be wondering what this ETH0 is all about. So let me explain something real quick first. I'm going to go more into detail on it in the networking portion of this video. If I type in ifconfig, it's a little bit different than Windows where you had ipconfig. This one here will be telling me exactly what I have for my networks. So this is my local loopback adapter, which is just my local host. This is my actual network card that I'm connected to the internet through, and there's my addressing for it. And then I have Docker as well for some different things. So ETH0 is the name of my NIC card that I actually want to capture packets on, because that's the one that I'm going to go to the internet on in this particular case. All right, so let's go back here, and we'll say TCP dump. I'll say if I can get it right here, -i. That means, by the way, I'm going back to what I had said previously, how I would always tell my students to look it up in the help file. If you look under the tac-i, you'll see it means interface, okay? Interface. So that's why I'm using that one. I want to try to make this as very basic and beginner as possible, so I'm going to probably keep flipping back to some help files to show why I'm doing these switches. I think it's pretty helpful. So we're going to say ETH0, and I'm going to hit enter. So it's just going to basically hang there. Now, I'm going to browse to something. So we'll open up here a Firefox browser, and let's go to chucknorris.com, because Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups; he pushes down the world, baby. And in this case, I think I have my. I'm pretty sure I got my. I think I have my proxy on. That's probably why it's doing that. Yeah. I think that I have my proxy on. So anyways, I won't finish navigating out to it because I got to get my proxy up for that. So anyways, if we go back here, you'll notice there's quite a bit of stuff happening. So these are all the different connection that I did. In other words, the three-way handshake to that chucknorris.com included all of this garbage, right? All my Amazon AWS garbage. I mean, geez, crow, everything is up here. There's my OpenDNS resolver. But basically, it's hard to read. but they basically tell you what flags are being used, like S or R for like SYN or reset or ACK or FIN or something like that. Then they give the IP address, the port number, go into, which is that bracket to the right, this location here, right? So the EC2 instance would be an Amazon one there. Likely this has something to do with the, what do you call it, the cloud-based stuff that Google is, I mean, not Google, the site that may employ, like the chucknorris.com or maybe an advertisement or something like that, may employ. But anyways, that's basically what you're looking at. And you can actually get real granular with it too. You can find out window length, right? You can find the ACK sequence numbers, which are pretty awesome. So anyways, that's TCP dump in general. That's a Wireshark alternative in the command line. So let me go scroll all the way down here, and we'll do a Control-C, as that thing will go on forever. All right, very cool. Now I can also list all open files that I have on the system, which currently I don't think I have, only just this Firefox in my terminal, but I can type in LSOF. Hit enter. That's quite a few actually going on in the background there. So there's quite a few different ones that are actually running as open files, and that's the one that's going to be listing for that. Now, the other one you can do here is you can just list them by the user. Now, in this case, there isn't more than one user on. It's just me, the root. So if I did LSOF and I want to find out which ones are running just as me, then I would do TACU, and I would say root. And that will list all the files that are, using me or opened by me, in this case here, root. Okay? All right, let's talk a little bit about how to get some user information. So I originally had shown you the ID command, and that's the very first thing I always run whenever I break into a Linux machine on any type of pen test or any type of war game or whatever. I always do an ID because I want to see who I broke in as. And this one here tells me quite succinctly that I am root. It's got 0, my group ID, everything's good to go on that. Pretty awesome. Now, if I want to actually display who the last user was on here, that's more recon stuff that you would do for post-exploitation. So you can go ahead and just type in the word last, and it will tell you any of the last people that were in this particular one for system or root or whoever the user was in this case here. So root was here, but then user logged in as this one. So I had logged in before as just standard user, but this time I logged in as root, so you can see the different ones that are in there. It gives you an idea of post-exploitation of who is the normal users that are on this machine. It's pretty awesome. You can also say who currently is logged in with just the word who, and you can also just use the word W. Pretty awesome. And that one there is pretty awesome too, because they tell you the idle time listed on there as well. But yeah, so you can see here I'm user root, and yeah, pretty much it. I'm in the graphical user interface, and that's pretty much what that means there. So let's talk about adding users to this bad boy. So if I want to add a user, and I want to do it so that I can set a password for it, because you can just do user add name and blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do the word add user. It's all one word, and then give it a name. So we'll go with Leroy for Leroy Jenkins. So we'll say add user Leroy. And now it will go ahead and make a new group for me. Notice the group number, 1002. So typically the way the groups work is your root will be 0, but any standard users will be 1000 and up. Those are usually going to be your numbers. And then you can see it also made a home directory for me called Home Leroy. Pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and give myself a password. I'll just say password. Real difficult one right there. Real security conscious one. Here I can go ahead and just give full names, do whatever. So we'll say Leroy Jenkins. And I'll just pop on past all the rest of it. So in this case, I now have a user called Leroy Jenkins. So I can type in ID, Leroy, and it will tell me Leroy. Okay, it'll tell me specifically about Leroy. Now, because I'm currently in as root, obviously that's what that is. So if I want to find out the ID information for another user that's on there and find out what they actually have for privileges, you can see here I've got a UID for Leroy, I got a group ID, and the group I'm in is that one. Now, another one I want to show you real quick about where you can find all of these users as well is called Etsy passwd. So if I type in cat/Etsy/passwd, don't forget cat will display it on the screen. You'll see I've got a whole slew here. I've got Leroy there, I got Wingnut, got a few other different ones up here, and all the way at the tippity top here I have root there. So root's got the groups right there, and he has access to bin bash, which is the terminal. Now if I scroll down here, I see Leroy, And the X, by the way, means the password is stored somewhere else in a hashed format, and it's in the location called shadow. In this case here, it gave me a number of 1002 because the previous user that I had created before was 1001. So here's the name they give me, and this is my actual location, and I have access to bin bash, which is the terminal. So if I wanted to log in as this particular user here, which is Leroy, I would say su, which means switch user, and I would say Leroy. And now if I do ID, you can see I am now Leroy. So in this case here, I'll switch back. So I'll say su by itself, and that's the actual root. So I'll give the root password, which on Parrot, I believe by default is Tor, T-O-O-R, root backwards. So now you can see I'm back again to root. Now I wanted to switch back to root because I want to give Leroy some additional privileges. In this case, we're going to give it something called sudo. Now, sudo in this case would be like run as admin. So when you're on Windows and you right-click something and you want to run as admin, you usually have to put in password and whatever it may be to run as admin. So basically, you're running everything normally as standard user with no privileges, which is good because if a bad guy breaks into your machine and you're logged in as admin or root, they have those same privileges as well. So you always want to run as standard user. And if I want to be able to give Leroy the ability to run everything as root, as sudo, I can do that, or I can be very specific and actually just say he's only allowed to run as root, leaf pad. But for now, we'll just go with the full gamut here and just give him full access to everything. So what I would do is say add user, and I would say Leroy. In this case, I would give him sudo. I want to add him to sudo. And there's a file called sudoer, and S-U-D-O-E-R. Let's see, I think it's under, /sudoer, I believe. I think that's where it's at. Okay, let me show you another real quick command so I can find this because I don't know where it's at, obviously. Another something real quick here to find anything on the system is you can type in the word locate. And sometimes you may have to install this or mlocate. It may not be on the Linux distribution, but I'm going to say locate, and I'm going to say sudoer because I believe that's how you spell it. Oh, okay, so let's see. It is under, S. It's got an S at the end of it. Okay, so we're going to navigate and cat out sudoers. And basically, anybody that has sudo privileges can run everything, any command. Now, obviously, as a Linux admin, you want to restrict that to certain things like maybe running leafpad or something as root. But this is what you want to look for when you come in to a machine. Like if you broke into a machine, you want to find out exactly what privileges they have. You would do the sudo command. So for instance, if I switch over to Leroy and I do ID now, you'll notice there's another thing added to the end of it called sudo. Now, if let's say I broke into this machine and Leroy is the machine he's the user on the machine that I've broken into, not root. I would then say, okay, well, I see he's got sudo privileges, so let me do sudo tac L, and right there, the password for Leroy. So whatever we gave, I think it was just password, right? That's for my user. And here it says, it tells me exactly what the user can run as the commands. So you'll find in the OSCP exams and things like that, this is something you'll need to know because there are certain things you may be able to use for privilege escalation if you can run as root. For example, if I wanted to restrict who can see etc/passwd, if I didn't want anybody to list that out other than root, I would restrict that. I could say that this particular user has the ability to run the cat command because there is another file called cat etc shadow. So if I were to go ahead, and don't forget I'm Leroy right now, so if I say cat etc/shadow, it should give me a problem because that's only supposed to be root privilege. So it says permission denied. However, I am in the sudoers group, so I'm pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead and say sudo, then cat, then /etc/shadow. Boom, pop, 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 another server drop. So here we can see it's got a salted hash for Leroy. I also have the salted hash for my buddy, Mr. Root, as well. So that's important to know when it comes to those particular commands. When you break into a machine and you want to find and you see the person is only like 1,000 something user, you know they're very limited, check the sudo file, because they may actually have a sudo for just one particular command. Let's say, for example, you broke in and you try all kinds of sudo this, sudo that, and you're trying all these different things and trying to see the shadows and all this other stuff, whatever. And he has no privileges. So if you type in sudo-l, and you notice on there that the only privilege he has as sudo is the cat command, / bin cat, wherever it's located at. That's the only permission he has to run as root. That's awesome. That's what you want, because now you know you can actually do a sudo cat shadow file and get the hashes. So that's where the administrator screwed up, is they gave this one guy one privilege, but that one privilege was pretty powerful when it came to breaking and escalating. Good stuff. All right, so anyways, that is basically how you would do that. Now, if you want to add Leroy to a group, you can do that as well. You can say, I think I have a group. Let's see. Oh, by the way, to see your groups, you can also do cat /etsy/groups. I think it's groups. Okay, it's group. I always get those mixed up. There we go. Here you can see I got a group called Wingnut, and it's got 1001 in it, and Leroy's already part of this particular group here. And sometimes I've noticed in some of the war games you get off of VulnHub, sometimes I've seen a wheel group that actually is a 10, and that 10 actually was a root administrative user sudo thing or whatever, which is pretty cool. So keep that in mind. Here up at the top, you can see the root group, which is 0. Now, if I want to add Leroy to the Wingnut one over here, I can just say group add, and let's see, we'll say Wingnut. Oops, I'm sorry, we already added it. I'm trying to think now. Oh, what is it? I think it's a user mod. Trying to remember now. I think it's user mod. I think is the command I'm looking for. Let's see. So user mod. I think it's a capital G for group, and the group is Wingnut. And I want to add Leroy. I believe this is the right way to do it. Oh, that's right, because I'm actually Leroy. So I want to get out of Leroy, and actually I could do a sudo on that, I suppose. Right? There we go. Sudo. Bing. Notice how it didn't ask for my password again, because I already entered it in this terminal window. Once I close this terminal window, it will ask me again for that password. So in this case here, that's how I can add to groups. So let's just verify, and we'll do an ID, or just ID, because we're already in as Leroy. All right, there we go. So right there you can see, wait a minute, where's the group here? Let's see. Was it ID Wingnut? There we go. Okay. So group 1001. All right, so in this case here, if I wanted to actually delete this user, which I'm not going to, but you can also use one called user del for this one, and then the name. So you can say user delete Leroy. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. And actually, we got to get out of Leroy before we delete him, because we already logged in as him. So we'll say su, put in the root password, and let's try that again. Now, I want to show you something here. Notice this. Notice how I don't have my command when I hit my up arrow. I don't have that command I just typed last, because I had typed that as Leroy. Pretty interesting, huh? So in this case here, it doesn't actually do a history of the one that you were logged in as when you switch to another user. So this case here, we don't need to do sudo because we're root. So we'll say user delete Leroy. And it looks like he is currently used by the process. So we can always kill that process, but I'm not worried about that right now. But that's the command that you would use for it. While I'm on the topic of history, let's type that in real quick. This is another good thing you can use for post-exploitation. If you type in history, it will actually show you all the history of the commands that were typed here. Why is that important? Well, what if the person actually typed in, let's say this said, blah, 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 the password equals Wingnut. Okay, well, we now know what the password is for whatever he was typing a command for. Now, there's ways that you can type in the terminal, and you can ignore history. I think it's called histignore is one of them. We won't get into that. It's a little bit more advanced, but there's ways that you can type so that you actually do not record yourself typing clear text passwords and things like that. But this is really great for post-exploitation, is do a history command and see what this person was running. It may say he started the Apache server. Now you know there's an Apache server running as this guy. He may have started whatever. Those are commands that you would actually use there. Some of these other ones are pretty interesting, like finger is an interesting one too. So if I type in finger and then I say root, in this case here, it'll basically give me information about that particular user, a little bit more than just the ID one. In this case here, it tells me the shell immune used here, and tells me the login, the directory, and all kinds of good stuff like that as well. I can also view the different user logins that are on this particular machine. I can say ls logins tac u, and there we can see the user, Wingnut, and Leroy were the ones that were actually listed in here. And the tac u we used because, let's go to ls logins tac h. If it's not too large here, there we go. And you can see the tac u stands for user accounts. That's why I use that command. Now, something else I want to point out while I'm looking at this help file is another way that you can get information about the commands that you're running, and it's called a man page. And you can say man and then the name of the, whatever the command is. Like if I want to find out the ls command that we have used, if I want to find out all the documentation for that, I type in man and then ls. And here, I just hit my space bar to go down pages like that. Okay, and that will go down in different pages, but it will give you a full detailed manual about every single command and instance being used for that. Sometimes just the tac h or help file that you do in the command line will only give you a small subset of it. These man pages gives you the whole thing. And when you're done, you want to get out of this window, you just type Q and it quit, basically. Okay. All right, let's get into some file and directory stuff. Now, we already talked about cding, which is the cd / over to somewhere else. So we're pretty good there. If I want to just go ahead and, let's see, we already did the root directory. We did the list all files. We did the print working directory. Let's do a make directory. We haven't done that yet. All right, so let's see what we have. Okay, I'm going to make a directory. I'm going to make sure I didn't do a double here. So we'll say mkdir and then the name of the directory. So in this case, we'll say Wingnut. Actually, let's do Angelina, because Angelina Jolie, that's my girlfriend. You know that, right? All right, make directory. Bing. There we go. Angelina. Right there. And if you want to find out for sure if it is or not, again, we can use the file command, and we can do it on there, and it tells me it's a directory. Okay. Now, if I want to go ahead and remove a directory, I can just use rm, right? You can use rmdir, but the only problem with this particular command is if it had subfolders and other content in it, it would give you an error saying you have to get rid of the content within those subfolders. In this case, with rm tac r for recursive, I can just remove the whole thing. So let's go into our Angelina, or actually let's go into our Angelina one. And from there, I'll make another directory, and we'll just call it test. And then from there, I'll navigate into that, cd test, and I'll make a file. Now, here's a quick command on how to make a file without any content in it, just a plain file. I can say the word touch, and I can say chucky.txt like that. Doesn't have any content in it, but you can see it's actually a file. So now if I were to go ahead and navigate up again, okay, so I'm back here on that part. Angelina now has a folder within it, and it also inside that folder within it has a file. So if I were to try rmdir and Angelina, if I can get to it here, Angelina, and it says the directory is not empty, right? So in this case, I can do an rm tac r, and then I can say Angelina, bing, gone. So that's an easy way to do that if you have multiple folders within it. So let's talk about actually making some files as well. Now, if I wanted to put information into a file from the get-go, from the creation of it, I can use a command called echo. Now, if I just use echo by itself, I'm going to put this around quotations because in Linux, if there's spaces, then it will give you a little bit of a problem unless you have quotations around it. So I can say quotations, what's up, players? And then end quotation like that. It'll echo it to the screen. Okay, that's all it does. It just repeats it. What I can do is I can then take that and put it into a file by using this command, or this symbol, a bracket. And then I can say what the file is. Now, if I want to put it here, I just give a name of the file. So I can just say Chucky, or I can say, I'll just call it playa.txt. Okay. By the way, you don't even need extensions on these, but I'm just doing it for those cases. So in this case here, it's going to go ahead and pop that into there. And now if I want to read it, you'll remember our command cat. So I can say cat playa.txt and what's up, players. Now if I want to add something additional to that, I can do it this way. So I can say cat, and I'll say, we'll do the old Joey, how you doing? Okay. Now, if I want to add it to that, I actually have to add 2 brackets to the right. Hit that, and then we'll do our cat again. And you can see it's got both lines. Now, if I were to do the same exact thing, but only do that, you'll notice it wipes everything that was in that file and replaces it just with that one. Be careful with that, because sometimes when you break into a machine and you want to go ahead, let's say, for instance, go to the SSH folder and you want to add your public key to the authorized keys file. If you went in there and you tried to append by doing an echo of your key into the authorized keys file, but you only did it with a single bracket, you're going to wipe out everything that's in the authorized keys file and nobody can log in. So yeah, real problem. So remember, to append, you need 2 brackets. Now, if I want to go ahead and copy that file somewhere else, and let's see, where do we want to put it? Let's just put it in our music folder, I guess. Don't forget, case sensitivity. The syntax would be CP, okay, and the name of the file, in this case, it's called playa.txt. Don't forget what I was talking about with the relative versus absolute. I don't have to give /root playa.txt because it's in this context. It's relative to where I'm at. But the music folder is also within the context of where I'm at, so I can also not have to put a slash for that either. Okay? Now, if I don't want to CD to it, I just want to see what's in that directory music, I can just say ls music, like so. And there we can see it. Now, on the opposite side, the absolute pathing, I would do something like this. Let's say I wanted to put this text into my var www HTML folder. For that, it is not in this relative path, therefore I'm going to have to do an absolute path. So I would say /var /www/ what was it? HTML, right? Yeah. Okay, then if I do my ls /var /www/ HTML, you can see there it is, player.txt. Okay, so that's the copying of it. Now let's say I didn't like that name, playa, and I wanted to change it to what's up. I can change it by using something called move, MV. So move would be MV, the name of the file, in this case, playa.txt. And I would say I want to change it, I want to change it to what's up .txt. Okay? Don't forget, player.txt is in this relative path. Hit enter. You'll notice that player.txt is no longer here. Now we have whatsup.txt. That's how you rename a file in Linux. It's called MV. So we already did touch. Let's talk about a text editor. Now, in Linux, you have a lot of very strong opinions in the community about a varied amount of things. And one I've noticed is a really sore spot with a lot of people is the text editors that are in the command line. You have your VI people, VI, however you say it. You got your Nano people. You got your Emacs people. These are all different text editors that come in a lot of distributions. Nano typically doesn't come in all distributions. VI usually does. That's why most people will say, you have to learn VI because it's always going to be on somebody's machine. Okay, sure. For me, as a beginning class, I'm not going to go into VI. If you want to learn more about it, check it out. But for now, we're just going to use a very simple nano, which is a text editor. So if I want to actually write something that I'm visually watching other than that echo command, I can just type in nano, and I can say my stuff.txt, and now I'm at a screen here that I can actually type a bunch of different things, and there's a bunch of different command lines. Now you see the brackets down the bottom, the caret symbols right here, these little things right there. That's actually control on my Windows keyboard. So I don't know what it is on Mac or anything like that, but on the Windows keyboard, that's control. So to exit, you do Control X. So this is where you start just typing in stuff, right? So you say Chuck Norris knows Victoria's secret. That's some good stuff, baby. So Chuck Norris knows Victoria's secret. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So in other words, if I want to save what I have here currently, I can do a Control X like that. It's going to say, do you want to save this modified buffer? I would type in Y for yes. And this is where I can just keep the name that I originally made it as when I did the nano command. And I'll just keep it the same, but you can change it obviously here, hit enter, boom, done. So now if I cat my stuff, my stuff.txt, there we go. So you can see that's actually going to be listing it out there. Now, if I have something that's actually very, very large, as far as the amount of content within it, like there's some word lists that are pretty large. Actually, let me find. I think it's under USR. I think it's under /USR bin /word list, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, it's not directory. So to break past that, I can say locate, and I can say dirbuster, because I know there's a word list in there. Now, if I think this is going to actually have a massive amount of output, I can do this command where I do a pipe symbol. Okay, and what the pipe symbol means is whatever I'm running for a command on the left side of the pipe, it's going to take the output of that and use it as input for the next command. The next command I'm going to do is a more, which means it's going to stop it at a page, and I hit my space bar to continue. So I'm just going to say more and hit enter. Okay, so there's more than what actually is in this page itself to list out the dirbuster. But let me find out user bin. Okay, user share. That's what I'm looking for. User share. So I can just keep hitting space like this, or I can do quit. So if I navigate over to let's see, USR/share, and I think word list is under there. Yep. Okay. And then I can navigate over to dirbuster, maybe, I think it is. Yep. So under dirbuster, you'll find some different files there. So in this particular case here, I can say less or more. Either one's fine. There's another command called less for one of these here. So I know these are fairly large, like this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this real quick here. And I'm going to say less, and I did a Shift-Control-V shortcut to paste it on the terminal here. So I'll hit less, and then from there, it does pretty much the same as that more one does with a little bit more to it. But that's essentially what we're looking at there. So I'm going to hit Q to quit to come back. So you can use less, you can use more, you can use tail, you can use head, those other ones that we had talked about before. Okay? And we already did the file command. We already did echo. I think we're pretty good there. Let's talk about processes and management of the processes on the Linux machine. So the processes will be running. You can type in the word PS like that to see whatever processes are running. But you can also do PS-AUX to get a big full list of different processes. This is like the Windows Explorer that we have. You can see the Sue Leroy, all these different ones that will run there. But you can also go ahead and display all currently running processes that are on the system by doing PS-EF. By the way, if you ever miss any of these, you don't want to keep going back in the video, I'm going to post all these on the same page that the video is on as a kind of a cheat sheet, and you can just use those as well, so you don't have to keep sliding back and forth on the video. So anyways, that lists pretty much everything running process-wise, and you'll notice there's some PID numbers that are there as well. If I want to kill any of them, I just need to know the PID number for any of these particular ones here, and that's basically how you would tear into those. So if I wanted to kill, let's say, this process here for Leroy, that 32308, copy that real quick. I would say kill, and then I would give the process for that. Bang, session terminated. Done. All good. So that's pretty much how you would, whoa, close this out here. What's going on with that? And what happened to my window? All right, let me bring this back up here. That was weird. All right. Oh, by the way, that command I'm doing for that to make it smaller and bigger is the Shift Control, and then I'm doing the plus symbol to expand it. The minus symbol, I think, makes it smaller. Maybe, there we go. So it's Control minus, actually. That makes it smaller. So there's your little shortcut for that. Anyways, so that was the way to kill certain processes as well. Now, you can also put certain processes in a background as well. So, for example, there's just a simple command where I can just sleep for 100 seconds, and that will basically be just a command that's running for 100 seconds. So I can say sleep 100, but if I do that and just hit enter, you'll notice that my terminal is now taken up and I can't do any other commands in it. That's not going to work. So I'm going to hit Control-C like that, okay? And we'll do clear. Oh, by the way, clear will clear the window that you're on. Now, if I want to put that into the background, I can do sleep and then command, and then I can do ampersand like that, okay? And then what that will do is it will run the command, and that gives you a number 1, as you can see over there on the left, and it's running it as a background job. And to determine if that's true, you just say jobs. Here we can see it is currently running the sleep 100 one in this case. Now, if I do FG, it's going to bring to the forefront any commands that are, or the last command that was run. So I can say FG, bring it to the front. You can see it's running. Now, if I want to go ahead and just pause it, I can do a Control-Z. Once I do a Control-Z, I can say BG for background, and I'll say %1, which is the sleep command that I was running, and that's going to be in the background. So now if I do jobs, you see it's running. All right. So again, if I hit FG, bring it up. If I Control-Z, okay, and do jobs, you'll notice that it's stopped. Okay. If I want to run it, I would then go ahead and do BG, and then the number, in this case being 1. And now if I go to jobs, it's running again, okay, until the 100 is done. So that's essentially how you do those. Pretty awesome. And that'll eventually time out. All right, let's talk a little bit about networking. So I had told you about ifconfig, shows you all the different ones like you would do ipconfig in Windows, but you can go ahead and see what all of your devices are. Like if you have a wireless, it will typically be like WLAN 0, things like that. So to see everything, you just do a -A. And in here, you can see it gives me everything I have, Docker, Etho. So in this case, this is my actual Ethernet running right now. You can see right here the iNet is the address. That's the IP version 4 address. Here's the net mask. You see it's class C. Here's the broadcast address, okay, right there. And then it gives me an IP version 6 link local address, the FE81. And some other information listed down below, like your MAC address right there, Ether. And yeah, I mean, that's really all you kind of need off of it right there. And the MTUs and all that kind of stuff. But that's essentially how you read these particular commands. So if I want to do that. Now, if I wanted to address a machine specifically, like say for instance in VirtualBox, I always recommend that if you're doing any hacking labs and you have an attack machine and a victim machine, that if you're on your own network at home, it's a good idea not to run connected to the internet. So I sometimes recommend to do internal networking. And with internal, it doesn't use DHCP. So it doesn't give an address out automatically. So if you need to address a machine, you would do ifconfig, type it in there, ifconfig, then you would say -ETH, you would say your interface NIC card name, which in this case would be ETH0. Now yours may be 1, 2, or whatever. So you'll put in that. Then you'll give the address range that you want to do. Let's say I wanted to switch it. I'm not going to switch it, but let's just say I did 192.168.1.0/24. Right? All I'm basically saying is address this machine as 192, I'm sorry, not 0. Let's just say 5/24. I'm saying give this an address of 1.5 in a Class C network. So what it would do, I'm not going to do it now because it would take me off my interwebs there, but it would actually list it right here, and then the net mask would indicate 2555.0 for the Class C, and it would automatically figure out the broadcast and all that kind of stuff. But that's how you would actually do a addressing of your machine. Now you can get a little bit more detail with it, and that becomes a little more advanced when you start messing with adding in your own DNS. Then you're modifying a file called resolve.conf, and you can also change your gateway and all that kind of stuff. We won't get into all that today. Now pinging is very much similar as the one that's on Windows, and some people think ping is actually a protocol of some sort. It's not. It's actually just an application. That's all it is. It's actually called Packet Internet Groper. I don't know who came up with that name, but it's pretty stupid, but that's the name it gives it. So it's actually just an application, and it is here on Linux. So unlike Windows, though, Windows will do 4 pings and stop. Linux will just keep going forever. So if I did ping google.com, hit enter, it'll just keep going and going and going and going until I control C out of it. Okay, so that's ping. You can do that. Okay, and there's a variety of different tools you can use in your Linux distribution, like hping to do floods and all that kind of good stuff as well. So pretty crazy. Now, if I wanted to do some basic DNS stuff like an NSLookup or dig, NSLookup is across the board. With Windows, I don't believe you can do dig. I think dig is specific to Unix. So dig is very similar to NSLookup. So you just type dig google.com, and it will give you information as far as the DNS records, right? So the A record, in this case here for google.com, and there's the IP address for it there. So you can do that one. You can use the host command as well. So you can do the same thing, but this time you type in host on that, right? And then you can also do the same thing with your typical one that you use in Windows, which is NSLookup. There we go. Okay, so the same commands that you would see normally in Windows as well. Okay, so pretty good stuff. There's also one other one. It's called wget. That one typically, I think it comes with most Linux distributions, but you may have to install it. So for that, let me go ahead and find a document that we can download. Hey, I got an idea. Let's go check out my website. Yeah. So let's go to shikataganai.com. I heard it's a really cool website. Somebody told me. And I have some files on there that we can download. So let's go to my AppSec library, which is pretty awesome. It's got a ton of different topics for AppSec. So if you're interested in any application security stuff, this is what I do for a living in the real world there, outside of my video world here. So I've compiled a bunch of documents. Let me just grab, I don't know, let's grab the first one. So if you go to it, you'll see I've made documents that you can actually read in the browser, but you can also download or open in a new window. So we want to download, so we're going to get the link location. So let's go over here and we'll do wget and then paste in that. That's the whole address for the document that I want to download. Hit enter. Bing. There we go. Now if we look here, we should be able to see right there because I've already downloaded it before. Okay. So wget, that's going to be handy for whenever you break into a machine and they have wget installed and you have an exploit for that machine. So let's say they're using a Linux kernel that has a known exploit on exploit.db, and let's say it's a C file that you have to compile with GCC. Let's pretend that the machine you broke into has a compiler for C called GCC, and you have an exploit.db file that you know of, an address, but you need to download it onto the victim machine and compile it with their GCC and put it in the temp directory. So for that, you would use wget to be able to pull that down. Or if you have a file that you're hosting on your own Apache web server on your Taka machine or Python simple HTTP server or whatever, you can do the wget to that as well and pull the file into there and compile it. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff. Last one on networking I want to go over is netstat. That's something you should do on your own at your own house a lot because you'll be able to see, is anybody connected to me? Because when you actually do a netstat, it will tell you what connections are connected currently to you, which ones are established, which ones are in a listening state. That way you can see what ports are open. And usually the way I'll do it is I'll just do netstat. And because there's so many different switches, I usually just do the Tupac one. Tupac, because I know a lot of people know Tupac. So we'll say dash Tupac. Now you can just do Tupa, which is probably a little bit less granular than this. But let me control C out of that. Yeah, we'll just do Tupa. Now, before we do that, let's go over here to the H again and see if we can get some information. So basically what I'm trying to do in this case here, if I can find all the switches. So this would be a situation you would want to use the man page. So right here, dash T means TCP. The U, UDP. The P, where's the P? Right up here. Programs, display the PID program name for sockets. So basically I want to see the TCP connection. I want to see the UDP connection. I want to see the programs being run. And then TAC A, where's that at? Right here, all. So display all sockets. In other words, if they're connected, listening, things like that. So let's go ahead and run that real quick. So we'll say netstat dash tupa. So doing the 2-pack one will actually keep it running consistently. And we don't want that to happen right now because we have other things we're going to do. So this will basically tell me which ones are connected. So if I see something that's connecting to something where it says established right here, I want to know what is this address. In this case, I can see it's Firefox, right? If I see one that I don't understand, I go Google it and say, hey, who's this cat? What's this IP address coming from this trailer park in Florida or somewhere or whatever? Then I can see, okay, somebody's actually in my machine and we have some real problems here. It also shows you what ports you actually have open locally. So it's a great command to run. Netstat is what you would do. Now you can do that in Windows as well. Let's talk about zipping files. So we already know we have a file here. What is it, Ajax? Yeah, we already have that tar. Let's go ahead and zip this bad boy up right here. So to do a zip file, as it were, you can use zip, or you can do the one that's more common, which is tar, and we can do CF, and let's give it a name of doofus dot tar, I guess. Sounds good. And we want to go ahead and zip up this file here. All right, so paste. So tar, CF, and we'll look at the help file in a second for that. Doofus dot tar. So also, essentially what we're doing here is just making an archive of this. Hit enter, ls, and we can see, where's that? Right there. Doofus dot tar. So if I want to extract those contents, I would then say tar. Let's do a dash H real quick here. So does it help? Okay, so it looks like, so in this situation, this is a good time to show you this. If they don't do a dash H, sometimes they'll do a dash dash help. So let's do that. So we'll say dash dash help. All right, quite a few different commands here. Let's see. So we want to try maybe X and F maybe. So let's see if those are down here. If not, I'll leave it for you as a homework here. I don't want to spend all day looking around for all these commands, but essentially there's quite a few of them here. Z would be G unzip. So if I were to do G unzip, I would do that one. B zip, that would be that one. I think the main one we're looking for is the actual unzipping one. Anyways, you can take the time to look through all these. Create a C right there. Yeah, that's what we want. All right, I'm going to leave, okay, X right there. That's the one. Extract. That's the main one that we want right there. But I'll leave it to you to look through the help file to figure out why we use these particular switches. But we'll extract this one. We'll say tar, XF, F meaning the file in this case here. So what do we call it? Doofus dot tar, I think, right? And now if we go to ls, bing, we have it there again listed. And that's pretty much all there is to that bad boy there for that. All right, let's talk a little bit about finding stuff. So if I want to find some things, I already showed you one, which is locate. And you just type in the name, and it will give you a location. But if you want to locate something within a file, that's a little bit different. So let's go ahead and nano a file here, and we'll say chuck.txt, and we'll say, I don't know, Alexander, when Alexander Graham, I'm horrible at typing, Graham Bell first invented the telephone. He had 2 missed calls from Chuck Norris. Oh, that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff. All right, so that's one line. So then if I want to go down to another line, I can do that. I can say giraffes exist because Chuck Norris uppercutted a horse. So anyways, I got 2 lines. Control X. Okay, hit Y for yes. I want to save it. Keep it as the same file, chuck.txt. So in this case, if I want to grep something within there, like horse, I can say grep, and I would give the what do you call it? The pattern, I guess is the word they call it. So I'm going to look for horse. In this case, it's just the word. If it's multiple spaces in there, make sure you use quotations, and then the file that it's in, which is chuck.txt. So in this case, what it will do is it will find the line that it's on and just give me that line where horse is, and you can see it's highlighted in red in that particular case here. Now I can also search recursively in a directory as well to be able to see it. So if we go up a directory like that, so now we're in a different directory, which is the top of the file system, I can go ahead and grep horse chuck.txt, which won't be in here, but I can go ahead and try to see if it will do a recursive, and we'll say /root, because it's a relative path in this case. Well, actually, you know what? I don't actually use that slash, do I? And there we go. So from there you can see, even though we're back one directory, I can go ahead and grep it for, recursive, looking through that. And if I had put that inside another directory, within another directory, I can do the same thing and just do it from the top of the directory and just say the TAC-R for that. Now, another one you can use as well is called find. And find would be if I did find slash. I'm basically saying I'm looking for a specific file, and I want to start at the very top of the file system itself and look all the way through the entire file system. That's where this command comes in handy if I'm doing that. But I can also scope it specifically to somewhere else. So I can scope it specifically like to root, right? In this case here, I want to find name, and we'll say Chuck, right? And I'll hit enter. In this case, notice I didn't find anything because I have to actually be very specific about it. So if I go back here, it finds it. See? Interesting, right? Now I can also go ahead and find, let's say, something size-wise. I'm trying to think like Apache, like that Apache conf file. So if I said find, and I said slash, I'm trying to remember what's that now, etc/Apache2, right? There we go. And I want to find anything that has a size more than, let's say, 10 megs. So we'll say 10 megs in this case here, which everything in there should be bigger than. Oops, let's see. Let's see, text size down there. Oh, I think it's capital M. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, is there nothing? Oh, actually, 10 megs. That's pretty large. Let's drop it down to 1. Really? Interesting. Let's see. All right. Maybe I'm in the wrong location. Let's try to navigate to it and see. Is it there? Okay, so it is there. So if I try find /tc/Apache2, right? That's the location I'm in. And let's see. Before I do that, let's find out the size of some of these files by doing ls-tac-l. And yeah, we got some that are pretty good size there. Magic, yeah. Suppose we could do that. So let's try our find command again. So I'll say etc Apache2 tax size. Maybe there's supposed to be a space there. Interesting. Should find something smaller than that. Epic fail. Epic fail. What else are we doing wrong? Let's see. Let's do this. I'm missing something there. So we'll just do this. Anything on the file system that is bigger than 10M. Why do I keep doing that? Got to be very specific on these commands. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure what's going on with that Apache 2, but anyway, regardless. So 10 meg and higher, or 1 meg, whatever I had set it at, this is what it's finding throughout the whole entire file system. It's starting with a slash. It's moving on down through all those different ones. So you would use the dash size. Let me go back to it again here. We go to the dash size and then give it a plus or minus 10 meg or whatever you want for that. All right, so that's basically how you would use that find command. There's more things you can do with that. You can actually look specifically for an extension like .txt, something like that. All right, let's end this whole thing with talking about permissions. So I'm going to go back here to my page here. I wrote up this little thing here for permissions to kind of go over these, and this will be the last thing we do in this video. So permissions are very important. Every file and directory on Unix or Linux will be assigned 3 types of owners, and I've listed them here. So we see user is the owner of the file. Group is all users belonging to a group are going to have that exact same access permissions for whatever that file is. Other would be everybody else. That's essentially what it is. And then you have 3 permission types that are going to be sit there for the file and the directory. You have read, write, and execute. And they're pretty much exactly as they sound, right? And I can read a file. I can read the directory, list the directory, its contents within a directory. That's another example of read. Write obviously gives me permission to write or modify the contents, and execute will allow me to execute a file. So I have this little picture here, talks about those. Now I had previously mentioned the ls-tacl, and I said I was going to talk about these a little later. So in this case here, the first dash is a indicator that it's a file. If it was a D, it would be a directory. So the first 3 that you see at the very beginning, RW dash, that stands for user, the owner of the file. Those are his permissions. In this case, that guy has read, write privileges. This third one is an X. So we don't have execute privileges on this one, so it's just a dash. Now the next 3, RW dash, is for the group. So in this case, the group here has access read and write. And then the last 3 are everybody else. In this case, everybody else only gets read. And so if you scroll down, that's basically how I've broken it up. And again, these will be on the website. So to change permissions for something, you would use a command called chmod. And to do it, you've got a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it with symbols or you can do it with numbers. In this case, we're going to talk about numbers. So if I do a 0 on something, it means no permissions. 1 is execute, 2 is write, 3 is execute and write, 4 read, as you can see everything here. So as an example, if I did chmod 764 chuck.txt, what we're saying is that the user, then the group, then everybody else is the third number. So it looks like the owner gets all permissions, read, write, and execute. It looks like the group only gets read and write. And here we get the 4, which is everybody else, gets read access, and the file that we're setting permissions on is Chuck. Okay, so let's go back and take a look at that. So in this case here, I'm going to go back to my root directory, and we have a file here, chuck.txt. So if we do an ls-tacl, we can see that, where is that? Right here, Chuck. It is a file. It looks like the owner has read-write privileges, but it looks like the group has only read. So let's change that. Let's give the group the ability to read-write. So to do that, we say chmod, and then we say 7 to keep the owner at all privileges. Actually, let's keep it at read-write. So let's go back and take a look at our cheat sheet here. So we know read and write is 6. So we're going to go ahead and keep that at 6 for the root, and we're also going to go ahead and 6 for the group. I'm sorry, for the owner and for the group. And then for the other one, which is everybody else, we're going to give them just read, which in this case would be 4. So we'll come back here and we'll do a 4, and we'll say chuck.txt and hit enter. Now if we do our ls-tacl and go up and look at Chucky Boy here, we can see Chuck, and we can see right there that the owner has read-write. We can see the group has read write, and these guys have read only. Pretty easy how to do that. All right, let's go back here and take a look at some more. So there's other ways you can do it, which is symbolic with letters and things. And you would use a plus to add a permission. You would use a minus to take away a permission. And you would do equal to set the permission and override any permissions set earlier. And then the ways that they're represented would be U for user owner, G for group, O for other, and A for all. And it's always kind of confusing the difference between those two, but we won't focus on that right now. So in the example here, we have chmod U plus X. U would be user owner, and we are adding executability to a file called chuck.sh, which is a shell file, and that will turn it green to make it executable. All right, so that's pretty much what that one's talking about there. So let's jump back here, and even though this, let's actually change that chuck one. So we'll say mv chuck.tt. We'll go ahead and make it into a shell script, and we'll say chuck.sh. Okay. Now that we have that as an sh file, we can do chmod, and then we can say u plus x, in this case here being execute privileges, for chuck.sh. Okay, hit enter. Now if we go do our ls tac-l and come up and look at chuck.sh right here, we can see right there. So right there we can see we have full execute privileges, boom, right there. Pretty awesome. All right, so that is kind of the basics of how to do that. Now in the document I'll put on the website, they'll also talk about how to change owner and how to change groups and all that kind of good stuff as well. All right, so I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed what you saw there for the Linux stuff. I was kind of long, but hopefully it gave you a basic primer into what you can do with Linux, and we'll go a little bit deeper on some other things. And whenever I get into like the pop, 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 and other server drop stuff, I'll be going over some other different Linux commands that will come to mind whenever I'm doing those, and I'll explain them as I go. But this gives you a good base to understand Linux at its basic level so that you can actually be a lot better at it further down the line. And we'll also do a NATAS series, which is over the wire NATAS, which goes over, I'm sorry, not NATAS, Bandit, which goes over Linux command line challenges. So we'll go over a few of them because there's a few other things that we can talk about that we haven't covered here. But this is kind of the basics of it, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, until the next time we see, make sure you check out www.shikataganai.com. Replace the I's with a 1, and you're good to go and off to the races. So until the next time, happy hacking.